Hello and welcome to another edition of Chris reading his own blogs. Seem to be rattling these out. So today we're going on to blog number 6. Let's get ready to rumble. Oh, well, if anybody saw any of the stuff I did about the EuroSTAR talk, where I was looking at the rise and fall of World Championship Wrestling and how we can learn things, you'll know that I like a bit of wrestling, but how can we combine those things? Testing and wrestling. Okay, so the links between old songs and the themes of the blogs do continue. Bit of an deck there, I apologise, but I will continue. So I'm unashamedly enthusiastic about my family, my job, what I do with my time and where I go, and what I find truly gripping. Inspiration can come from all walks of life, and late on Sunday night, this would have been January 2017, I felt motivated to write this particular blog, so more than 6 years ago. The subject, another crossover observation. I seem to like to do these things. But this time the crossover is none other than pro wrestling and automation, because we can learn from anything, right? So I was watching the WWE Royal Rumble and this is the outcome. So I've broken it down into 8 subjects. This is the broad brushstrokes across it, but hopefully stimulating. 8 bits: milestones, evolution, naysayers, passionate evangelists, rules, observations, misconceptions, and a conclusion. Milestones. While the wrestling calendar is changeable, there are some mainstays. WWE operate on an annual build-up to their biggest event, WrestleMania. Other organisations are available, such as New Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Kingdom, TNA's Bound for Glory, and now there is All Elite Wrestling as well. Lovely. What these events represent are hopefully the culmination of weeks, months, even years of build-up to a hopefully, again, satisfactory climax and conclusion to a storyline. These events are when more eyes are on the product than at any other time in that cycle. In software, we look to have satisfied the testing requirements on a product prior to release. We have stories that build, ebb and flow throughout the product lifecycle before final execution and eventual final release to the masses. Other observations are it's scripted, but those scripts need to be maintained and updated accordingly. There should be consistency across the board, but that's not always the case. And sometimes stories inexplicably end and are dropped, never to meet a satisfactory conclusion. Evolution. Wrestling today is not like it was in the past. I grew up with the Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan feuding, and it was magical. But if I watch today, it's a tad low rent, in all honesty. If the product was the same today as it was then, it would likely be out of business by now. Embracing change is the only way. In the same way, there are so many new wrestling organisations to meet the needs of different fans for whom the headline product just doesn't cut the mustard. Shout out to ICW, a nice little Scottish production there. Automation tools have to move on with the time or they risk being made redundant very quickly. Whether that's drivers, .NET support, OS compatibility, or target market, software developers, while sometimes fiercely loyal, can also be fickle, which I think is an oxymoron. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If the tool doesn't meet the needs, they'll find a new one or they'll make their own. Other observations are a different setting will have different needs and requirements. Just because it works in one setting doesn't mean that it will work elsewhere. Obsolescence can be overcome with a little creativity and freedom, and legacy, if shoved down our throats, it can grate and put people off. The same with predictability. Naysayers. Have you ever met someone that says pro wrestling is utter tosh? That's another word for sort of rubbish, garbage. I bet you have. Heck, you probably think so yourself. There are an awful lot of people who feel the same about automation. Does this mean the naysayers are wrong? That they're out of touch? Maybe, but I doubt it. It's all a little subjective. Either way, it can be very difficult to convince these people otherwise. Convert, if you will. Passionate evangelists. This invariably leads to the natural opposite. The passionate evangelists, those who are hell-bent on automating everything in sight. Not only will they promise the world, but they'll try and sweep you up in all the excitement, just like the pro wrestling fan, that's right, there's another typo, who you'll see on the edge of their seat, wearing their fresh new merchandise, cheering for the baby faces, that's the good guys, and booing the heels. Ha! Total marks. Enthusiasm is contagious and it is a wonderful thing. That passion can go a very long way, but maybe it's just me being a bit of a realist, but I see pro wrestling and automation for what they are and where they fit into my life and where they might have limits. Pro wrestling cannot be my main focus for entertainment, not least because any spare leisure time that I have I share with my wife and she could not care any less about pro wrestling. Seriously. Automation has its place too in the cycle of testing. I enjoyed reading Victor Slavchev's take on this blog, The Non-Manual and Automated Tester. Neither is the be-all and end-all. Rules. What do we get when we code without rules? Code that no one wants to work on or that no one knows how it works? The kind of thing that people say is bin-worthy or should be started all over again. Automation works when there are rules, good practices, sensible practices that others can follow. Pro wrestling sometimes has pretty flaky rules, and for the most part any gimmick matches that were hard to follow have to be consigned to history. But if you're truly interested in something that is a terrible example, more typos, take a look at What Culture Wrestling's article on those things. It is bad and cringeworthy. Observers. Now, I've already mentioned What Culture Wrestling. They have a fairly tongue-in-cheek approach to things, but there are some serious and dedicated commentators on pro wrestling. Some of these are highly regarded, such as the likes of Dave Meltzer, others not so much. But if there's an opinion that you have, you can probably find one that supports you online. There are some heavily polarised opinions on automation and wider software testing out here too. Where to look for inspiration and balanced opinion is hard these days. With targeted clickbait and news that some wonderful algorithm out there has picked out for me, no wonder there's such a smorgasbord of opinions out there. Wisdom dictates that a balanced digest from different sources will help you to find your own place and where you stand. So read a lot, educate yourself and find where you stand. Maybe there's a little deep? I don't know what that means. For the blog talking about pro wrestling and automation. Who knows? Maybe I'll turn it into a talk this year that I've just done. I digress. Misconceptions. Now I've touched on this already, but I'll say it again. 100% test automation is not possible in terms of actually achieving something good. If all your tests are automated, then what are you testing? What do the testers do with their time? Where's the dynamism, the intuition? What makes a tester test? Pro wrestling isn't real. Well, I think they're really wrestling. I know they're really strong. And I know that they get really hurt. Yes, they may have predetermined endings, but I guarantee that they hurt. More observations. Some wrestling is performed so badly, yes, your grandma could probably do a better job. Some automation is a massive waste of time and a maintenance nightmare. Why do we automate? What is the end goal? What should plan for what the requirements are? That is, we should plan for what the requirements are. Good reading, Chris. So here's the conclusion. Thanks for making it to the end. My final thoughts are this. Legacy is important, but we have to move on. Nostalgia is the only reason that Ric Flair was still around for so long, but no one actually wanted to see him wrestle anymore. Automation, as was even 5 years ago, well, I wrote this 6 years ago, has moved on. We have to update, maintain, evolve our automation to stay relevant. The biggest name is not always the best. Hulk Hogan was not the best wrestler. We're not all supposed to have the same favourite. LabVIEW, a tool that I used to use, is a wonderful test tool, but doesn't mean that that's going to be the best solution for me. Find a tool that meets your requirements once you know your requirements and not the other way around. It doesn't matter if you think something might be embarrassing. Your thoughts are valuable, your passions are what make you who you are, and that is something to be celebrated. And finally, Crow Sting was my favourite and my wrestling hero. Thank you once again, and I'll see you next time. Or maybe I won't. I can't click. Very 9 out of 10 testers. See you later.